Here is a timeline of major events that have occurred between Russia and Ukraine. 1991 – Ukraine declares independence from the Soviet Union. Ukraine declared independence from the Soviet Union on August 24, 1991, following the collapse of the Soviet Union. This was a significant event in Ukraine's history, as it marked the end of decades of Soviet control and the beginning of a new era of independence and self-governance for the country. 1994 – Ukraine gives up its nuclear weapons. Ukraine agreed to give up its entire stockpile of nuclear weapons, which was the third largest in the world at the time, in exchange for security assurances from Russia, the United States, and the United Kingdom. The agreement, known as the Budapest Memorandum, was signed by the three countries and Ukraine, and provided Ukraine with assurances that its sovereignty and territorial integrity would be respected. The agreement has been the subject of controversy in recent years, as Russia's annexation of Crimea and involvement in the conflict in eastern Ukraine have raised questions about its commitment to the agreement. 2013–2014 protests in Ukraine. The protests in Ukraine began in November 2013, after Yanukovych backed out of signing an association agreement with the European Union, which would have deepened Ukraine's ties with Europe. This sparked widespread protests in the country, with many Ukrainians wanting closer ties with Europe and to distance themselves from Russia. The protests continued into February 2014, when Yanukovych was ousted by protesters and flees to Russia. March 2014 – Russian annexation of Crimea. In March 2014, Russian troops annexed Crimea, a Ukrainian territory, following a controversial referendum on the region's status. The move was widely condemned by the international community, and led to a deterioration in relations between Russia and Ukraine. Russia defended its actions by claiming it was protecting ethnic Russians and Russian interests in the region, while Ukraine viewed it as an illegal annexation of its territory. The annexation of Crimea remains a significant point of tension between Russia and Ukraine. April 2014 – Separatist movements in eastern Ukraine. In April 2014, pro-Russian separatist movements began to emerge in eastern Ukraine, particularly in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, where armed groups took over government buildings and declared independent republics. The separatists were supported by Russia, which was accused by Ukraine and Western countries of providing them with military and financial aid. The emergence of the separatist movement sparked a conflict in eastern Ukraine that has continued to this day, with thousands of deaths and significant damage to infrastructure. May 2014 presidential elections in Ukraine. In May 2014, Ukraine held presidential elections following the ouster of former President Viktor Yanukovych earlier that year. Petro Poroshenko, a businessman and former government official, won the election with over 54% of the vote. Poroshenko's election was seen as a significant moment for Ukraine, as he campaigned on a platform of reform and closer ties with Europe, while also promising to address the conflict in eastern Ukraine. July 2014 Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 is shot down over eastern Ukraine. In July 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 was flying over eastern Ukraine when it was shot down, killing all 298 people on board. The plane was allegedly shot down by pro-Russian separatists using a Russian-made missile launcher, although Russia has denied involvement. The incident was widely condemned by the international community, and led to increased sanctions against Russia by the United States and European Union. The investigation into the downing of MH17 is ongoing, and has been a point of contention between Ukraine and Russia. September 2014 ceasefire agreement. A ceasefire agreement is signed. In September 2014, a ceasefire agreement was signed in Minsk, Belarus, between Ukraine and the pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. The agreement was aimed at ending the conflict in the region, but was not fully implemented, with fighting continuing to occur in the months and years that followed. Several subsequent ceasefire agreements were also signed, but failed to bring an end to the conflict. The Minsk agreements remain an important part of the ongoing efforts to resolve the conflict in eastern Ukraine. February 2015 Minsk II Agreement. In February 2015, a new agreement known as Minsk II was signed in the Belarusian capital between Ukraine, Russia, and the pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. The agreement was aimed at ending the ongoing conflict in the region, and included provisions for a ceasefire, the withdrawal of heavy weapons from the front lines, and constitutional reforms in Ukraine. While the Minsk II agreement was seen as a positive step towards resolving the conflict, it has not been fully implemented. Fighting has continued to occur in eastern Ukraine, and both sides have accused each other of violating the terms of the ceasefire. The issue of Ukrainian control over its eastern border with Russia has also remained a sticking point in the implementation of the Minsk II agreement. Despite the challenges, the Minsk II agreement remains a key part of the ongoing diplomatic efforts to end the conflict in eastern Ukraine. November 2018 naval confrontation. Yes, that is correct. In November 2018, a naval confrontation occurred between Ukraine and Russia in the Black Sea near the Crimean Peninsula. The Ukrainian Navy accused Russia of firing on and seizing 3 Ukrainian naval vessels, including 2 small gunboats and a tugboat, while they were attempting to sail through the Kerch Strait, a narrow waterway that separates Crimea from mainland Russia. Russia claimed that the Ukrainian vessels had violated its territorial waters and failed to comply with orders to stop. The incident sparked a major international crisis, with Ukraine declaring martial law and accusing Russia of aggression, while Russia denied any wrongdoing and accused Ukraine of provocations. The incident led to increased tensions between Russia and Ukraine, as well as between Russia and the West, with several countries condemning Russia's actions and imposing additional sanctions. The incident also highlighted the ongoing conflict in eastern Ukraine and the broader geopolitical tensions between Russia and the West. Early 2021 reports emerge of a buildup of Russian troops near the border with Ukraine. In early 2021, reports emerged of a significant buildup of Russian troops near the border with Ukraine, raising concerns of a potential new escalation in the ongoing conflict between the two countries. In March 2021, Ukrainian officials reported that more than 100,000 Russian troops had been deployed near the border, along with tanks, artillery, and other military equipment. Russia claimed that the troop movements were part of a routine military exercise, but Ukraine and other Western countries expressed concern that it could be a precursor to an invasion or other military action. The troop buildup led to a period of heightened tensions between Russia and Ukraine, as well as between Russia and the West. The United States and other Western countries expressed support for Ukraine and called on Russia to de-escalate the situation, while also warning of potential consequences if Russia were to take aggressive action. Despite the concerns, however, the situation eventually eased, and the troops began to withdraw from the border in April 2021. February 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russian troops invade Ukraine. In February 2022, Russian troops invaded Ukraine, claiming that they were protecting Russian speakers and Russian interests in Ukraine. The invasion followed months of escalating tensions between Russia and Ukraine, including the troop buildup near the border in early 2021. The Russian invasion has been widely condemned by the international community, with many countries imposing sanctions on Russia and providing military and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. The conflict has resulted in tens of thousands of casualties and significant damage to infrastructure, including homes, schools, hospitals, and other essential facilities. Despite multiple ceasefires and attempts at diplomatic negotiations, the conflict has continued as of March 2023, with ongoing fighting and casualties reported on both sides. The situation remains tense, with concerns of further escalation and a humanitarian crisis in the affected areas. The conflict has had significant geopolitical implications, including strained relations between Russia and the West, as well as the displacement of millions of people and the disruption of regional stability. Thanks for watching.